समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है, अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या समझ में नहीं आया।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है, अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
अब समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
Donald Trump's 50% tariffs on India are officially here, even as India pushes back and the Prime Minister talks about not compromising on the interests of farmers and small entrepreneurs. In the meantime, the American president continues to make claims about his role in mediating between India and Pakistan during Operation Sindoor, a claim that India has fiercely rejected. This time in his comments, Donald Trump also revealed what he says he said to Pakistan's Asim Munir during the military conflict. There's a lot to talk about, including how geopolitics has been upended and what impact this might have on India's economy. There's also the big question over whether India's relationships with the United States of America can be salvaged. Trump, in his remarks, once again called Prime Minister Modi a terrific man. I'm Barkha Dutt. You're with the Mojo Story. On the program today, in a moment from now, we'll be talking to a senior partner based out of America at the Asia Group, Nisha Biswal, who has also served previously as Assistant Secretary of State in the U.S. administration. This on a day when Trump's 50% tariffs have officially hit India. But guess what is exempt? Petroleum products. The reason it's important to mention that is because the secondary tariffs of 25% are said to be a quote-unquote penalty for the purchase of Russian oil by India. India's ambassador to Russia in the last few days has made it clear that India will continue to buy Russian oil, in fact, going so far as to say that India will purchase oil wherever it gets the best deal. It's also important to mention that Europe buys refined oil from India, and perhaps that's one of the reasons that petroleum products are exempt. The United States of America also purchases refined oil from India, not to the same degree as Europe. The big question is what happens next. Geopolitics is upended. The Prime Minister is scheduled to be in China at the end of this week, where he will be attending the SCO summit. That's going to be a meeting of Putin, of Xi Jinping and Modi, leading many to ask whether there's a new India, Russia, China axis emerging to counter Trump. A lot to talk about, even as H-1B visas also come under attack from the Trump administration. I want to introduce our newsmaker on the program today. Nisha Biswal is with us. She is the first Indian American to have held the position of Assistant Secretary of State in the American administration. She's now a partner in the Asia Group. Ms. Biswal, it's a pleasure to have you with us. How concerned are you? You know, when the 25% tariffs were announced, before the penalty and the secondary tariffs were announced, I think you'd hoped that the Trump administration was using a negotiating tactic. We've gone well beyond that stage. How worried are you about the state of play between India and the U.S.?
Well, Barkha, first of all, lovely to be here with you, and look forward to seeing you in person next time.
Absolutely.
I'm really disheartened that the moment today that brings us together is this moment of trade tensions between the United States and India. I had hoped that the discussions, the negotiations that have been happening at the working level were going to yield really a historic and unprecedented trade agreement between the United States and India. All indications were that that was the direction things were going in. I think things veered off for a couple of different reasons, and the implications, as you noted, have been very disruptive. I wouldn't yet say that we're in a crisis moment, because I think we still have an opportunity between the two countries, and most importantly, between the two leaders, to be able to set the relationship and the trade discussions back on track. It really is going to require a leader level engagement at this point, because at the working level in the United States, the trade negotiators, as well as, the managers of the strategic relationship, have done all that they can, and it's really in the hands of the president. And the president, I think, is going to need to hear from the prime minister for something to be worked out.
In other words, what you're saying is that this impasse can now only be broken if Trump and Modi find a way to break it.
That is correct. And I do believe that the two leaders can do that. I think that the prime minister has been a really effective leader on behalf of India, has been effective in engaging at the head of state level, and has his own personal dynamic with the president. The president continues to refer to him as his friend and as a terrific leader. So I think that there is scope there for the two leaders to work out an agreement.
So I have some more questions on that, because there's one narrative in India that believes that the problems have become personal, that there was a particularly acrimonious phone call that took place on the 17th of June between the two leaders. But you are right that the American president, in his latest remarks, has referenced Prime Minister Modi to be a terrific man. I'm just going to play out that clip because it's an important clip. It also talks about what Trump says he said to the Pakistani leadership when this military conflict was on, something we haven't heard him talking much about. This is perhaps his first statement on that score. Let's listen in.
Just like India and Pakistan, we're going to end up in a nuclear war if I didn't stop them. It was sort of strange. I saw they were fighting. Then I saw 7 jets were shot down. I said, that's not good. That's a lot of jets, $150 million planes were shot down. A lot of them, 7, maybe more than that. They didn't even report the real number. And I'm talking to a very terrific man, Modi of India. And I say, what's going on with you in Pakistan? Then I'm talking to Pakistan on trade. I said, what's going on with you in India? And the hatred was tremendous. Now, this has been going on for a hell of a long time, like sometimes with different names for hundreds of years. But I said, what's going on? I said, I don't want to make a trade deal. No, we want to make a trade deal. I said, no, I don't want to make a trade deal with you. You're going to have a nuclear war. You guys are going to end up in a nuclear war. And that was very important to them. I said, call me back tomorrow, but we're not going to do any deals with you, or we're going to put tariffs on you that are so high. You were there, Howard, right? Yep. You're going to put tariffs on you that was so high, I don't give a damn, your head's going to spin. You're not going to end up in a war. Within about 5 hours, it was done. It was done. Now, maybe it starts again. I don't know. I don't think so, but I'll stop it if it does.
So that's a sort of interesting but confusing articulation from Trump. To start with, India questions the classification of Trump's role as a mediator or someone who brokered the ceasefire. Secondly, the foreign ministry here says that the first phone call that takes place between the two leaders is on 17th of June. Trump isn't very clear or specific on the dates on which he speaks to somebody he calls a terrific leader, which is Prime Minister Modi. The reason I'm bringing this up, Nisha Biswal, is because in India, there's now a growing perception that this is no longer about oil. It's no longer about Russia. It's no longer about trade. It's Donald Trump being upset at a personal level with Prime Minister Modi. Some say it's because he didn't meet with him when the campaign was still on. I think India chose to say that if we weren't meeting with Kamala Harris, we wouldn't meet with Trump. Both were still candidates. Some say it's because Pakistan has said Trump deserves a Nobel. India hasn't. When you say Modi and Trump have got to sort this out, the question is, if the tension is between them as well, how do they sort it out?
Look, Barkha, in the relationship between nations, there is no space for emotion. It is a dialogue of interests. The two leaders need to come together on the perspective of how do you advance the interests that converge between our two countries and manage the interests that diverge. And really, that has to be done at the leader level, because in the United States right now, the individual who is making the decisions and setting the tone and tempo is the President of the United States. And so any agreement that is going to ultimately be negotiated is going to be with the President of the United States. I think that the individual that is best placed to be able to do that in India is the Prime Minister of India, who I think is a very effective leader, effective negotiator, is very charismatic, and is very, very strong and fast on his feet. I have full confidence that in an engagement between the two leaders, they would be able to find areas of agreement.
And you are thinking of a meeting where the spade work is done by officials, or are you just thinking of a phone call, or are you saying it doesn't matter as long as they both talk directly?
I mean, I think a lot of spade work has already been done. I think that at the working level, at the ambassadorial level, between the foreign ministries, between the national security establishment, we had a 2+2 intercessional just earlier this week. There's been a lot of spade work. There's spade work that's been done not only in the weeks leading up to this, but really in the last 25 years of work that has gone into the U.S.-India relationship. So I don't think what is missing here is enough preparatory work. I think what is missing here is a leader-level engagement that clears the air, sets the table, and gets down to the business of reaching an agreement. That is what is in India's interest. That is what is in the United States' interest, and it is what is in the U.S.-India partnerships, what it requires at this moment.
What is your own assessment? How much of this is really about the purchase of Russian oil, and how much of this is about something else? We've heard Vice President J.D. Vance talking about aggressive economic leverage. The administration seems to genuinely believe that with these 50% tariffs, it's creating some sort of pressure on Putin's Russia. But if you look at the exemptions that have come out just today as the tariffs officially hit India, actually, apart from pharmaceuticals and smartphones, you do have refined petroleum products exempt, right? And this continues. And the reason I bring this up is this could be because, we know that the EU has bought 15 billion worth of oil imports from India. 3 billion is the figure for the United States. When people in India, the commentary here is, okay, this proves it's not about oil. I'm just curious to know your own take. Is it about oil? Is it about India refusing to budge on farmers and dairy? Is it about something else?
Look, I think all issues are points of leverage in the way the administration has approached this. And what I would be worried about is in the absence of an agreement and a leader level engagement, they will continue to look for additional points of leverage. So you see all kinds of inconsistencies in terms of, if you are dealing with Russian energy, why India and not China? Why India and not the EU? If you're dealing with student visas or H-1B, why is China now, Chinese students are being admitted according to the president, and yet the Commerce Secretary is talking about H-1B restrictions. I think that until an agreement is reached, you will see that the administration continues to identify additional what it considers pain points in the U.S.-India relationship and use them for leverage. So my hope and my fervent advice is that there is too much at stake between the U.S. and India, that we need to have leader-level engagement that clears the air, that sets the table, that reaches an agreement, and that can then get back to the business of identifying what are the areas of convergence that the two governments want to work on to try to advance during the tenure of both leaders.
So we've had two public statements from Prime Minister Modi, not too much from him publicly. One spoke about how even if he had to pay a personal cost, he was ready, but he would not compromise on the interests of farmers, the dairy sector, and fisher folk. And the other, more recently, over the weekend gone by, he spoke about how India had to develop a resilience. We've seen an interesting interestingly timed attempt to reform the GST sector, the goods and services tax. And I think there's some realization here that you've got to speed up on economic reforms, because the stronger your economy, the more leverage you have as a nation on the global stage. I'm just wondering what you made of both of those remarks. For India, it's been a classic red line, these sectors, right? Dairy, fishing, farmers. I don't see any government actually being too different about it, no matter who's on the other side of the table.
First of all, I think that the statements from the Prime Minister and various members of government on economic reforms and resilience are absolutely appropriate and called for. And as the famous saying goes, never waste a good crisis to be able to get done what you need to get done. I hope India does not waste the crisis moment and does accelerate on reforms and build resilience in the economy and efficiency in the economy and in the private sector. At the same time, all of those things take time. And what is fundamentally in India's interest is to get the target off of its back, to give itself the time and the space, and to give its economy and its industry the time and the space for resiliency to be built up, for reforms to take place, and to, in order to get that target off of its back, it requires an interim agreement, an agreement of some sort with the administration. You see nation upon nation reaching that same conclusion and reaching some kind of an accommodation with the United States to get the tariff target off their backs. And I think India should do the same.
Well, a lot of people in India might say that you've got to keep your self-respect as a nation, and you're an Indian American, so you have some sense of how we are wired as a people. Pride matters. We are still not fully a post-colonial nation. The memories of having had to fight for our independence are still fresh. There are still people alive who saw the freedom movement, who saw the independence movement. So that sense that this is for many Indians about sovereignty isn't something that's going away. And I'm wondering how, because there is a psychological dimension to the public sentiment in India. And I'm wondering how you read that.
I mean, I certainly understand that sentiment, and I am not saying that it's not justified. Certainly, the pride of the nation has felt slighted, and the reaction is emotional. But again, I will say there is no room for emotion in the relations between nations. It has to be cold, hard realism, pragmatism, and an action on the basis of interests.
And specifically, what might, other than the two leaders now sorting this out, what specifically do you think could move this ahead?
I mean, I think the makings of a deal are there. I think that, what we have seen from many other leader level engagements is the ability to package and announce significant investments in the United States that help to address trade imbalances. It's really about being able to, I think for the president of the United States, it's very important for him to feel like he has personally had a hand in crafting the deal that is announced. I think every deal that has come to fruition has had a, leader level touch. It may be changed somewhat during that leader level engagement, but it has enabled the president to feel like it has been him at the end of the day that has accomplished what needed to be accomplished. I think in India that has been missing with the U.S.-India negotiations. It has largely been at the working level. And if we are to have an agreement, it will require the two leaders to engage and come to some understanding. It could be many different things. I don't know that it requires concessions in ag and dairy. I think that there are commitments on, U.S. energy that India could make. There are commitments on investment in the United States. There is a massive amount of Indian investment into the United States that Indian businesses are doing. Has India aggregated that? Has India, taken kind of the next 5 years of U.S. India and tabulated what that might come to, and start talking about the consequential nature of this trade relationship?
Why do you think H-1B visas are suddenly under attack? I know you make the larger point that till this is sorted out, there are going to be, sort of choke points used by the Trump administration, and therefore the first order of business has to be the leaders to talk, sort it out, get onto the same page. But you've had the Commerce Secretary, you've had others in the administration, you've had those close to the MAGA base make comments about Indians taking away American jobs. And it's thin on facts, the things that are being said, but there is a kind of rhetoric and a narrative building up. Why is this happening, you think?
I mean, immigration is one of the major red lines in the United States that has galvanized the MAGA movement, the Trump base, and is a major line of effort in the priorities that this administration has been advancing here domestically in the United States. So it should not be a surprise that they're going to be taking measures to control immigration at all levels. And so this is an area that I think is in the target and under discussion. There are many, many reasons why the H-1B program has deeply benefited the United States, American companies, the American economy, but all of that is immaterial if again, the point at which all of these discussions are happening right now in the United States are about bringing India to the negotiating table and exercising additional leverage. So I fear that more and more issues will come up.
Yeah, unless this is sorted out, and you still believe that it's for the leaders to sort it out. Finally, I want your take on how this is altering geopolitics, right? So many things are unpredictable. You have, the Prime Minister attending the SCO summit in Beijing at the end of this week, in China at the end of this week. Who's to say he wouldn't have done it anyway? But the fact is that timing is significant. Putin is going to be there. There is talk of at least a short-term sort of convergence of interest between Russia, China, and India, even as India is fully aware that Donald Trump may want to cut his own deal with the Chinese. He's been quite soft on the Chinese, so China purchases more Russian oil than India does. How do you see this? I know you've been traveling, you've been in Singapore, you've been in this part of the world. What are you picking up on the shape of geopolitics while all of this is happening?
Well, I mean, I do believe that the very extractive approach that the U.S. administration has taken has had consequences in our strategic relationships. There has been a sentiment that the big winner in all of this is going to be Beijing, that China will come out being able to project that it is now the upholder of global norms, and it is the upholder of the global order. I don't know that that is in the U.S. interest, in India's interest, but it is the effect that the Trump administration's policies are having geopolitically. And I note that with the SCO summit this weekend, that in your intro, you talked about a potential for a Russia, India, China trilateral coming out of this. And certainly India probably feels validated in its more multivectoral approach, its strategy of trying to manage multiple different relationships. I continue to believe that the U.S. and India have a deep convergence, but we are living through an era in the United States where the administration has taken a different approach. Whether or not this is sustained is something that we will have to wait and see. In the meantime, China is clearly seeing advantages that it is acting on. India will need to make its own decisions in terms of what the relationships it has with its neighborhood. But I hope that it will always keep in mind some of the areas of deep divergence that it has with China, and will act accordingly.
Are you still hopeful, before we let you go, are you still hopeful of things getting better? Or do you think the relationship, which has had bipartisan investment of energy, both here and in the United States, over all these, I would say, over the last 2 decades, to get to a certain point, are you still hopeful that it will outlast an individual's different approach?
Well, I always act on the basis of hope. The alternative is less appealing. And I do think that if both countries act on their interests and not off of ideology or emotion, that there will continue to be pragmatic approaches for collaboration and cooperation.
Thank you so much, Nisha Biswal, partner at the Asia Group, former U.S. Assistant Secretary of State, urging there for both leaders in India and the U.S. to sort this out directly, saying that's what this moment needs. Thank you very much. Hope to talk to you again soon. Take care and see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.